Hello and welcome to the Astro Garden, a place for astrologers to chat all things astro. I'm your host Janessa of By Jove Astrology. Thanks for tuning in. Hello. It has been a while, but I am back. I have been in a very deep wintering, taking it easy, spending time with family, really just kind of reflecting on where I've been this year, where I want to go in the future, but feeling just honestly very quiet. As much as I've tried to do all of the reflection and the planning and the rituals and the stuff, I have found myself a little bit resistant to it and trying to just be gentle with that and giving space to that, and letting it come when it comes. And today it came on the very last day of the year. So, I just wanted to extend my gratitude to all of you who have been listening. I am a little bit in shock that this is my 27th episode of the year. I didn't really know where this project would take me when I first started it. I really started out just wanting to interview other people, and I still love doing that. But as I've done this, I've become a little more comfortable sharing my own thoughts, and really actually eager to share my own thoughts. So this has been selfishly a great outlet for me to share my ideas on astrology, but also have loved hearing how they resonate with everybody else and how bits and pieces that people have taken and have stuck with them after listening. So I appreciate those of you who have been so supportive. I've been surprised to find that some of these solo episodes have actually been more more broadly seen than some of the ones with astrologers who I really admire and would assume would draw a bigger crowd. So there's something there that I am humbly taking with me into this new year of okay, my voice matters. People want to hear at least some part of what I have to say. And I'm going to continue to find that voice and to keep sharing it. So thank you. I just really appreciate you all. So that being said, I wanted to share my thoughts on 2025. Of course, the hot topic on the last day of the year, of the calendar year, I should say. Everybody has a different way of celebrating. More and more, I truly feel like the solstice is the beginning and ending of my year, but I can't help but deny the schedule that we're all kept to with the Gregorian calendar. So January 1st is tomorrow. I will also share that I have not listened to a single year ahead podcast yet. These thoughts are my own. I would guess that there is some overlap with what other people are going to be saying. I'm really excited to listen to them all. So that's part of my MO to get this recorded and shared with you all today so that I can listen to what other people are saying later today for myself. That being said, there's a lot of overlap. Like I said, I'm always try to be very conscious of when I'm saying things that other people have said with giving credit. And, we're not perfect. I'm sure there have been things I've missed, but I like to give credit where credit is due. I try to reference all of my teachers so that you know where I'm getting my logic from. And when I'm quoting them directly or sharing something that they've said, I do try to acknowledge that. So, that's it's an interesting time to be doing this work because there is a logic and a system, and a lot of us can come to the same conclusions, based on that. It's not, it's still an art. There's still a ton of nuance, and everybody is still coming up with their own takes based on the logic, but it happens a lot where there is a lot of overlap, and it can be a little jumbled and confusing on whose ideas were first. But I just want to share that it's important to me to do this with integrity, and yeah. So disclaimers aside, let's get into it. And this isn't going to be. I'm not a big forecast person. I'm finding more and more that that's not the style of astrology I'm as attracted to, at least on like a mundane scale, or like in one-on-one readings. I find it a lot more interesting than I do like the larger scale, or it gets a little bit overwhelming to me. And I think I have just different interests in how I see the best use of astrology. So that being said, I'm not getting into the weeds here. I'm a Pisces rising, and this is a vibe check for the year, with vibe being a good keyword, I think, for Pisces. So we've got some really big shifts this year. I never want to fearmonger. I think there's plenty of that in the media, all over the internet, and, also in astrology. But it does, from an objective point of view, from a logical, astrological reasoning point of view, 2025 does present a lot of challenges and a lot of big changes. We've got a lot of the outer planets shifting signs, and when that happens, it's big shifts. It's big vibe shifts, for better, for worse. There's always upsides to any transit, regardless of the difficulty. At least I am of that point of view. But yeah, so it's not to fearmonger. It is just to say that things are changing. Change, we humans find difficult often. So it's not to say that it is just like an easy year. And you might be groaning. We've had a rough couple of years. But this is a big one. And, I think it's Austin Coppock on the astrology podcast who has said a couple times now that 2025 is when historians will look back on this era and say that the 21st century began actually in 2025. Like, if we look at the 20th century, a lot of historians would say that it didn't really start until World War One, in the 19 teens. So it's kind of a similar story here with the 21st century. Not really getting underway until 2025. And that's just kind of related to like all of these big shifts that will, take place over the next year, but are some longer term transits that we'll have. And, also, even though it happened in 2024, we had Aquarius shift or Pluto shift into Aquarius for until 2040, the next 20-ish years. But that's, kind of the precursor to all of this. And this will be the first full year that we'll have Pluto in Aquarius. And that's a major shift from being in an earth sign in Capricorn, a cardinal earth sign that we had, to an air sign that's all about ideas, communication, and way less concerned with like the material realm. So that has kind of set the stage for 2025. We start the year with Capricorn season, and it's our first Capricorn season without Pluto there. So there's like this new start. It's a cardinal sign. It's a new year. We had a new moon yesterday. So there's like this fresh energy in Capricorn. And then Pluto has gone to Aquarius. So yeah, it's going to be, it's starting out already just with a different vibe than it has for the past, since 2008. Later this year, some of the big transits are going to be two outer planets shifting, well, Neptune shifting into Aries on March 30th after 14 years in Pisces. So again, this is like something that doesn't happen very often. And then Saturn will also enter Aries on May 24th. And that Saturn shifts signs every 3-ish years or so. But this is like a whole nother generation then that will also be going through their Saturn return. So it's kind of like a, that rite of passage, that reaching, what in modern times is kind of like adulthood or maturation of becoming an adult. A lot of times in the society we live in now, this is like when people are making big life choices, like deciding whether or not they're going to have children, deciding whether or not they're going to be married. All of those things can obviously come after your Saturn return, but it's a common age at this day and age for a lot of those things to be taking place. And regardless, that doesn't mean that that's what your Saturn return is going to be about, but it's about making choices and about maturing and like the choices you make really influencing who you are becoming as an adult officially. As delayed as it might be, or as different as it might be than back in ancient times when astrology was more prevalent, that would have happened a lot younger. So of course, yeah, it changes. And then as far as other outer planets changing, Uranus is changing signs. It's moving into Gemini July 7th. So again, just another big shift. That one only changes signs every 7 years. And so it had been in our Taurus part of our charts for 7 years leading up to July. And I think going back to the Aries transits, Aries is a sign ruled by Mars and the Sun. There's something very aggressive about Aries. It's like it's a cardinal sign. It likes to start things, and it's ruled by Mars. It likes to start a fight. I think that is something that a lot of astrologers are concerned about, especially given like the world stage as far as politics are concerned at the moment. You could argue that, it's always like this, but it has been a rough year in terms of, just geopolitical events and things taking place as far as like potential war goes. So it's something to keep an eye on. Neptune fogs things up. It makes things cloudy. It's entering Aries first, so it's kind of setting the stage to be just confusing as fuck right off the bat. And then Saturn's going to come into Aries, and Saturn is like another malefic planet in entering a malefic sign, a sign ruled by Mars, the other malefic. So, it's kind of like I don't think of I don't think of Saturn as being militant, but I think of Mars as being militant, and Saturn kind of just brings in like the limits and the boundaries and the structure that like Mars can use there to become more militant. Mars is like the aggression, and like Saturn is the stability and like the structure of a framework with which to exact aggression. So there's something kind of striking about that, but there's also just a whole bunch of confusion with Neptune. maybe what we're seeing is not the whole truth, and I would argue that is definitely not the whole truth. So that's not to be paranoid, that's not to like be delusional or conspiratorial. It's just like there's something foggy about it, whether it's like, media representation of things, or our own our own interpretation of things, like clouding our judgment. There could be many layers to the illusions of Neptune and delusions of Neptune. So it doesn't sound great, but it also, I do like to flip things and look at what the positive could be. So with those transits in Aries, I think that there is a magical side to Neptune, and bringing that into a fire sign where it's more concerned with like spirit. This could be like the ignition, like igniting being a good Aries keyword of new beliefs or new renewed spirit, or like renewed, like new ways of engaging with spirit, or like some sort of, because it's like Mars and it's like Aries, and it's like this quick ignition, or like lighting up of a match, a striking of a match is a good Aries metaphor. And it's Neptune, which can be about beliefs and about like spirituality in some ways. This could just be like, I don't know, like some type of like magical spiritual event, or something that like ignites people's imaginations. And so like I think that is a really good thing, especially in a time when like we are all using the same social media, we're all seeing like the same things. I think we all have different algorithms based on what we click on, but like there is like a shared experience of the internet for sure. And especially like, when we talk about like media control over, a small amount of people having control over like what we're seeing in the media and how it's being portrayed. I wonder about this kind of like individualization of that, or like people like breaking out of like, or some kind of event that like, I don't know, strikes us out of this like sameness. It's individuation is another really good Aries keyword. So then with Saturn there though, like Saturn's kind of adding some like structure to this, and like, again, it's like spirit is a good fire element word. And it like could go negative with Saturn, where it's like a pushback, or like some type of regulation on spirituality or beliefs like that. But it can also like add a structure to those beliefs, or adding some sort of long-term like plan, or something long-term coming from whatever is started here, for good and for bad. So it's kind of adding longevity to the spirited ignition of Aries. I'm hoping this will kind of like get folks to be a little more courageous in a good way. I think some people could be a little less courageous in some of the bullshit that they do. But I mean, like people who are fighting for the people, or for freedoms, or for, things that benefit humanity. I think, this could be the ignition of a spark for people to take action on things that matter to them. for like the good of our of humanity and like the longevity of humanity. So I wonder about people feeling that, again, that like ignition of something in themselves that is about their spirit and about, you know, what they want to see brought into the world, versus just kind of sitting back and letting it happen or seeing where it goes, which is very Piscean, right? Like both of these planets have been in Pisces together. It's kind of like not one to take a lot of action. It's more about like the wait and see, and a little bit meandering. And now it's like, okay, these planets have a direction and they're gonna move in it. And then Uranus into Gemini, I think that's a big shift. That's Uranus. I don't particularly care to try to predict so much, especially on like a world scale, because its nature is to be unpredictable. But I think it's safe to say that there's going to be revolutions and breakthroughs around, again, like air sign topics. So like how we think, how we communicate. Technology is a great thing that I associate with Gemini a lot. It's a Mercury ruled sign. So I think there's going to be a lot of like breakthroughs in that department. And all of this to say is all of these transits are long term and they're not going to just happen overnight. Saturn is like the fastest moving planet of the three I'm talking about, and it changes signs every 3 years. So it's a slow burn. It doesn't just happen immediately. We'll probably start to see some things building as we approach all of these dates. And there might be some things that are louder than others. You can always watch for like the moon to trigger a lot of these things for longer term transits. That would be like if it's making any kind of aspect to them, or conjunct going through those signs. But then what I really want to get to finally after all of this is Jupiter into Cancer. So Jupiter, again, is our planet of like optimism, abundance, opportunity. It's the greater benefic. It helps. It's a helper planet. Likes to do good things, likes to have a good time. And it's going into Cancer, which is the sign of its exaltation. So exalted planets get a good rap. I think that they live up to the hype sometimes. And I think sometimes, it'll be interesting to see, because I think when I see this in birth charts, I've come to find recently in a couple different client charts I've looked at, that sometimes exaltation planets can be, for lack of a better word, lazy. And this is not to put those people down. It's just to say that it can kind of be so easy. Like, this can feel so easy that we forget that it takes a little work sometimes to make things happen. So I'm not trashing this transit at all. It's my favorite transit of the year. I'm personally extremely excited about it. But I don't think that it is like this end all be all like solution to all of these other problems that we will experience this year. And that's true of life. Like there's never any just like large enough band-aid to like fix everything, right? Like there's usually not just like a one size fits all solution. And that's, what I'm saying about this is like, don't overhype it, but do get excited about it. So Jupiter changes signs every year. So this will be about a 1-year transit. This happens on June 9th. And it'll probably feel pretty good off the bat, because at least for people especially ruled by Jupiter or who have Jupiter prominent in their birth chart, Jupiter's going from the sign of its detriment in Gemini, where it really struggles to do the Jupiter things. It's like doing the Jupiter things in a Mercury way, which is like the opposite that's like the details. And Jupiter is the big picture. So it's probably going to feel good just to get it out of Gemini, be able to like breathe a little bit, and to just take it a little bit easy once it gets to Cancer, where it's, treated as like this treasured guest. Like when we talk about exaltations, that's another way to talk about them, as like the guest of honor. And kind of going back to what I was saying about the lazy thing, it's like you don't expect the guest of honor to help with the housework. You don't expect them to do the cooking and cleaning. They're there to just kind of relax and enjoy, and like they make it better too. Like it's an honor to have them there. They are adding something, but it's not with like the hard work and the stuff that has to get done. So, anyway, it's not going to be this like magic solution to like all the conflict we're going to see this year with all of the Aries transits. But I think we can start talking about it as like potentially a silver lining in a tough year. I think my teacher, Adam Ellenboss at Nightlight Astrology, has talked about this a lot with Jupiter transiting dark houses as like not being so overtly positive. It's not like the year that you're going to have like the best thing that's ever happened to you happen. Typically, this is all birth chart dependent, so it would depend very greatly on the birth chart. But oftentimes it acts as kind of a silver lining, so that like even though it's bringing up these dark areas of life or these difficult things that are happening, Jupiter kind of acts like, a salve to that, or, prevents like the worst case scenario, or, presents itself as like something good that has come out of something really incredibly difficult. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking to this transit this year. And it's in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. It's a cardinal sign, so again, it likes to start things. Some good keywords for Cancer are like home, mothers, again, like tying to the moon, like mother figures, babies. I think of with Cancer. You can also think of it as like the crab and like that protective shell that they have. They have that like very tender inside, but there's like this hard protective shell that they carry or is part of their body. So there's a big protective side to Cancer, but it's kind of all about like home and family and nourishment and like cozy vibes. And those things are sometimes difficult topics in people's lives, oftentimes are difficult topics in people's lives. But I'm talking about the best case scenario, and I'm talking about, when I say family or I say mother or those things, I'm talking about the ones we've also created for ourselves, and like the homes and like the lives that we've created to nurture ourselves. So Cancer is just, I think that word that keeps coming up is like nurturing and care. And so I kind of see those topics as like being where we can look for the silver lining this year. I know for myself personally, I'm not even talking about major Cancer transits, but like thinking back to like 2020, which I think is objectively a difficult year for everyone. The things that did nurture me or that I felt like some type of silver lining about were those home things, right? Like beautifying my home, cleaning my home, spending time with my kids, like just trying to make, this small part of life, well, it's a big part of life, but this area of life that I do have some control over, and like investing in that versus like all of this other shit that's going on in the outside world. So like that protective shell again of like, okay, I can't control what's out there, so I'm gonna put up this like shell, and like, thinking back to like your COVID bubble or all these different things we did. Not to say that COVID's even over, but Anyway, whole other topic. But thinking back to those 2020 days and how this like protective shell kind of allowed me to go inward with my family and like focus on these very Cancerian topics of like nurturing and home and like my skincare routine and like, you know, all of these things that like make you kind of feel good. You know, taking care of your body. The moon is very tied to the body. So I think that's kind of where we can look to Jupiter being in Cancer as like being a salve, that word, for a lot of these other things going on. It's also some other topics that like that Cancer can bring up, you know, being ruled by the moon. The moon finds its joy in the third house, which is all about like community and our siblings and our friends, like our close friends, but also like communication and ways of thinking. You know, it's kind of like that junk drawer of topics, that third house. You know, it's also like I would put like very like witchy ritual type stuff into that third house. So I think like spending time reflecting on how we can find abundance in those things. I think that's going to be like a key takeaway of this year. One thing I've said that's just occurring to me now about the third house is like in terms of like our beliefs, because the ninth house is like our institutional and like big solar, you know, that's the place where the sun finds its joy, opposite from the third house. Our institutional beliefs are, you know, broader, big picture beliefs, but like that third house is like anarchy. And there's something very like, you know, much needed in that third house space right now. It's like these small little groups or these small little factions and these small little covens kind of like coming to the forefront as maybe like the solution or part of the solution to all of this stuff going on with like the Aries transits in particular. Yeah. Something I didn't say earlier that's occurring to me now is like Saturn in Aries is like authoritarianism, big time. Like, so I see this like third house tie-in with the moon and Cancer and Jupiter as being like the anti-authoritarian space that we can all nurture this year and find care for ourselves and for each other in ways that maybe we haven't before, or like with some type of renewed or like being Jupiter, just like a peak experience or like in a bigger, more abundant way. And then I also wanted to point out that looking back at like the theme of Mundi, where, you know, we get all of our planetary rulerships are kind of from that schema. It's a little bit of a mysterious schema. There's like, I don't know if it's been able to be traced to like where we first see it. I'm sure there's like a text where it's first been displayed or some type of tablet or something like that, but we know that it's really, really old and that its origins are going to go back further than probably we have documentation for. And so something else about it is like in the Middle Ages, it was suggested that this could be a birth chart for the universe, which I think is just such a mystical way of thinking about it. And I don't know that they had like sources for that. Maybe they did and that we have lost or have not yet discovered. But all that to say that in the Thema Mundi, Cancer is the first house. So I think what this kind of speaks to for me in this context is that like all of these nurturing things, we kind of have to start by doing with ourselves. We can't again, like, we can't help anybody if we're hangry. Like, we have to, like, take care of ourselves in order to do that third house thing where we're, like, in our communities, like, helping at, you know, organize things, or at the food pantry, or, you know, we can't go do those things if, like, our stuff is, like, not in order. And that's not to say you have to be perfect and that everything has to be perfect to be able to help someone else, because nothing's ever going to be. But, like, get your shit in order with yourself a little bit first. Like, don't go out there. You can't put on the oxygen mask for the kid sitting next to you until you have your own on. Like, you know, just take care of yourself, nurture yourself, so that you can feed into nurturing other people around you. So I think that's going to be, like, our biggest takeaway for positive things for this year. I hope that it will bring people opportunities. You know, I hope that this, like, heightened, jovial year will end up with some really, like, more peak experiences in a positive way as well. We don't get the peak without the valley. So, you know, that's kind of to say that, like, we don't get good without having bad, and that they're all required at all times in life. So yeah, I'd say maybe this isn't that bad of a year. I think, you know, in terms of astrology, it's a little crazy. A lot of things are changing at the same time. But it's also, like, every year is a mixed bag for everyone. There's no years where everything is just perfect. You get every job you apply for, you win every lottery ticket that you purchase. You know, there's nothing that doesn't happen. There's good and bad. I think we just have to, like, run with the good and, you know, take the bad more with a grain of salt and focus on what's going to nurture ourselves so that we can nurture each other. So yeah, that's what I got. I hope that you all have had a good end to your year. I hope that you're all starting the year on a good foot. There's a lot going on. There's, you know, can't forget about Mars retrograde. But there's always something. So just go with the flow. Take it easy. Be easy on yourself. Be easy on each other. And do something today to, like, help yourself. All right, that's what I've got. Until next time, thanks for listening. For more information about my work, you can find me at By Jove Astro on Instagram, at By Jove Astrology on Twitter, and the best place to find me of all is at my website, byjoveastrology.com.